Mr. O'Toole, 4-minute round.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to build upon what my colleague Mr. Sims was going through, and really I think, in fairness, I'll make sure you get a copy, because I think a lot of Canadians don't realize that vouching really is not used. In fact, your report mentions that many jurisdictions don't use it. Your report also mentions built-in resistance to change within even the elections community is strong, and I think this Act shows that change and evolution and improvements will lead to mixed views, if I can put it mildly. One key quote I had from page 27 of your report on vouching, and can we fix it? Your conclusion was reducing the current rate of serious errors during vouching transactions forms an immense challenge that should not be underestimated. And so fixing it appears difficult, immense, impossible. And the Supreme Court decision has shown that procedure, even asking people to follow procedure, is not disenfranchising them, and in fact it's maintaining the integrity of the process. I'm going to ask you about what's on Elections Canada's website, which is basically voter identification at the polls. It's actually Annex A, or H, Annex C of your interim report, which is the identification. So you talk about 85% or more of Canadians have the quick 1 to 3 minute time at the polling station. Those are people that are generally on the official list of electors, and they would come in with identification, go through the bit. The 15% you talk about the 17 exceptions that are required, and some of those are physical assistance, disability, a whole range of those 17. But the ones that seem prone to error are either registration issues, which you're addressing through training and other improvements, and vouching. And the audit showed that over 120,000 vouching transactions produced 95,559 errors. So your report said there was a 42% error rate as a minimum, but it could go as high as 80%. But you couldn't conclude an exact figure because in some errors there were multiple errors. So what I'm quoting here, the 95,559, those are errors, but one transaction could have had 2 errors. Is that correct?
You have serious errors and you have incidental errors. Some of the errors are not of huge consequence. An example is it's election day and somebody doesn't record the date in for example, in a voter registration form that they're taking. It's a given that it's on election day, but it is an error in that the instructions say you have to fill in the date that the registration was taken.
So is it fair to say that between serious errors, the 42% rate your report identified, and less consequential 80%, well in that range, over half of the vouching transactions have errors, whether serious or less serious?
A huge number of errors with vouching, no doubt about it. Now vouching is not the only alternative here, and if you're willing, I'd be happy to describe some of the
Unfortunately, with my time, I'm unwilling. Okay. But I appreciate that because...
Cut off.
Yeah. We go to Madame Latz-Andress. Thank you.
Merci.
4 minutes.
Thank
you, Chairman. I would like to thank you, Mr. Neufeld, for being here today to clarify your report, which is quite instrumental for us in dealing with this subject. I'd just like to start by saying that I find it deplorable that we're still talking about irregularities and fraud. I think it's very clear in what you have explained that the link is not there between the two, and that's no reason to completely remove the voter identification card and the use of vouching. I would just like to continue on what Mr. Scott was asking you about earlier. You were talking about your recommendation where you wanted to change the way elections workers are trained. This recommendation was one that was made not only by you but also by the Chief Electoral Officer, which I think might be a practical solution to reducing or removing the error rate that exists presently with the use of voter identification cards and also vouching. Perhaps they could be hired earlier, they could have better training and so on. Do you think that this would be an acceptable way of being able to deal with the problem?
Electoral officer in British Columbia for the 2005 general election, which was the first fixed date election at a provincial level in Canada. October 19th, 2015 will probably be the first fixed date general election at the federal level. One of the advantages of fixed dates from an election administrator's view is that everything becomes like a big project and you can work backwards. And ideally, you're recruiting your election officers far before the writ is issued. You're not waiting until 2 weeks before. You're not scrambling at the last minute trying to get training sessions done the night before they go to work. You're trying to do this in a really orderly way. And you're trying to get the best people you can, and you want to make sure that you fit training into their schedules and your schedule, and you want to make sure that you have training sessions of like role officials at the same time. So absolutely, having more time to do the training and the recruitment before the training really professionally is an advantage, I think, for improving compliance.
Vous avez aussi recommandé de...
Also recommended that more young people from ages 16 to 18 should be recruited. This is a recommendation that we have tried to promote as well, because that would allow them to have a real life experience in the election system. They would become involved, engaged in the system a lot earlier, and that would therefore would go out to vote when it's their turn.
Having 16, 17-year-olds included in being election officials is a positive thing. When I was in British Columbia, we made it a policy that we tried to pair up these underage election officers with well-seasoned older election officers. And so you would sometimes have an older lady with a blue rinse and a younger person with blue hair dye. And they would learn lots from each other, and they were frequently excellent teams.
Yeah.
The young people learn really quickly. Election procedures tend to be fairly complex, and they're really good at doing, you know, the complex paperwork and the analysis that's associated with applying that.
Thank you.